hunter and prey. Once I heard the phrase, "For every hunter, there will be his own hunter." Well, it turned out to be true. It doesn't matter how I make money. Let's say I work in banking. At the end of the day, money only provides opportunities, so it doesn't really matter how you earn it. I think every person should have a purpose in life, some pursuit worth living for. One feature of my hobby is anonymity. Right now I'm writing this post using Tor and a web proxy. My hobby is hunting, but not animals. My prey is people. At first I left traces. Even now I sometimes do. It's not always possible to hide the fact of a hunt. For example, in the lists of missing persons, unidentified bodies, victims of accidents or motiveless robberies, there is my modest contribution. True, law enforcement doesn't publicize information about serial killings, so one can only guess how many like me are walking around. Looking back, I understand that my actions and thoughts are abnormal, but I feel no regret. I remember the thrill and tension of the hunt. That's probably why I did it. Well, and because of childhood traumas, of course. But I won't bore the readers with stories about my happy life. By this point, you are probably feeling disgust toward me. Then the news that I myself likely don't have much time left will please you. Like is known by like. When you go out into the street, knowing that somewhere out there is your victim and that at a certain place and time your paths will cross, your perception of the world changes. At one time, it was a surprising discovery for me that people are very inattentive to those around them. Once I walked through a crowd with my hands covered in blood. No one noticed. People don't want to see what scares them. When someone asks if you have a knife in your hand and you say no, they will try until the last moment not to notice the obvious. After I started hunting, I began to notice small details in people that I had never paid attention to before. A bonus to the hobby was understanding others and heightened observation. This bonus led me to the event that has now locked me in my fortress, planning what may be my last move. An ordinary meeting on the street can change your life. I am a bad person, but let this be a recommendation for my words. I warn you that next to us there exist far more terrible creatures than serial killers. Even if this story seems implausible to you, be vigilant and control your emotions if you ever encounter something like this. During a completely ordinary walk, I met a strange man. Most people don't realize how they evaluate strangers. They don't even notice them. Try to remember the face of the person who just walked past you, did you manage? And half a minute later, I notice everything. This one was different. On a crowded street, only I noticed how some ragged bum was holding a ridiculous crutch like a weapon. People walked by, but I saw it. And the crutch didn't look like an orthopedic device. I had never seen a crutch with a sharpened, double-sided handle. A man of indeterminate age, looking like a heavily worn-out homeless person, matted hair, dirty clothes, wrinkled face, and a patch of plaster instead of a nose, covering half his face. He caught my gaze and stared back with unexpected malice. Usually I plan the hunt, gather information about the prey, the places where he or she appears. You should hunt those who make it interesting. Smashing the head of a colleague from the neighboring department with a hammer when you meet him in the entrance late on a Friday night after drinking, that's boring. Finding someone worthy of your attention is what really brings pleasure, and this bum seemed interesting to me. At first, tracking him was not difficult. A crowded Saturday street, the target moving slowly and not using transport. Then my charge wandered into a part of the city with low-rise buildings, where there were old private houses. I kept my distance. He was unlikely to notice me. That's how he entered that house. Even now, I won't say which city this is happening in, much less the specific locations. Just in case, I began watching the house. Before my acquaintance came out, I counted 2 more equally disgusting bums entering the address. Over the following days, it turned out there were at least 5 of them there. Periodically, other vagrants would visit. Unfortunately, I now have to admit that at that moment I slipped up. I wasn't counting how many left. Funny, but true, I relaxed too much, and that was the first reason for my failure. Although what guarantee was there that, even if I had left, I could have changed anything? Everything was quite ordinary, until the moment I got on the tail of my prey with the taped nose, who went for an evening walk. A late winter evening, a strange and disgusting trophy, the perfect time for a hunt. I stocked up on a rose from a broken bottle, considering the specifics of the target. No one would be interested in a bum found with his throat cut by a broken bottle. While choosing a convenient moment, I noticed that my bum was behaving unusually. It was surprising he himself was following some person, as if hunting him. I became terribly curious about what he was going to do. An angry bum is so-so prey, but a bum robber is much more interesting. The hunt ended in one of the empty-panel, high-rise buildings. The man my ragged guy was following turned the corner, my charge followed, and when I entered the yard, they were gone. Did they go into the entrance? Would you let a disgusting, unfamiliar bum follow you? There was no sound of struggle or swearing. Then, I noticed dark spots, a trail of which led to the entrance to the basement. It was open, although they are usually locked. I took out a flashlight. The spots were red. I didn't go down into the basement because I noticed movement in the depths of the yard out of the corner of my eye. Turning off the flashlight, I looked closer and saw another bum who had been standing motionless before but now started moving. Obviously, he had seen the flashlight light. There was another figure off to the side. I always hunt alone, so I don't set up mass ambushes, but I often think about it in case law enforcement comes after me. The bums had blocked all exits from the yard and were at a sufficient distance from all entrances to intercept a visitor. In fact, I now evaluate that little courtyard as a very good trap, from which it is very difficult to escape. A phantasmagoric sight, a serial killer fell into a bum ambush. However, at the time, I thought they were just robbing people. Getting into a fight that could cause noise, and in case a corpse remained potential evidence that could expose me, was not desirable. So I turned around and left the hospitable courtyard. I was quite surprised when a few blocks later I noticed one of the bums on my tail. Let's say I was very angry about the situation and decided that at least one of them wouldn't live to see tomorrow. I tried to lure him into a trap, a quiet place where I could suddenly attack the escort, quickly kill him and leave unnoticed. I had spent a lot of time studying the city, so I had several home preparations for different cases. However, the bum didn't hurry past the fence of the kindergarten, behind the gazebo where I was hiding, and the appearance of his colleague from the other side of the kindergarten made my blood run cold. Some vagrants were pursuing me on my own territory. The place was secluded enough to finish off at least one of them, but random passers-by ruined the plans. In the end, I shook them off, got in a taxi, reached the parking lot where I left my car, and drove home. Finding truly interesting prey whose capabilities surprised me was a stroke of luck. Where you would see ragamuffins, I saw my own kind hunters of urban game who think several steps ahead, more than worthy trophies. But trying to take a couple of people with a broken bottle, knife, screwdriver, and coil of wire would have been unwise. On my next watch near the bum's house, I took a night vision device and a converted gas pistol I bought from a former classmate who is now involved in crime. I spent quite a lot of time making something like a silencer for it, so now this piece of iron pops when fired, but not as quietly as I would like. Previously, there had been no need for it, but the situation had changed. During the day, my acquaintances didn't appear, neither leaving nor entering the house. When it got dark and no lights came on in the house windows, I decided to visit the new friends. It wasn't very prudent on my part, but besides anger, I was also curious about who I had encountered. I was already about to get out of the car when I noticed movement through the night vision device. A couple of vagrants, one of whom was my first acquaintance, Taped Nose, were dragging some bags down the street. They went into the courtyard of the house, but the lights in the house never came on. While they were walking, I examined them through the night vision device. The acquaintance was unchanged, the same ugly hat with some matted hair sticking out, the same plaster patch on half his face instead of a nose. The second one's face wasn't visible, he had wrapped it with a scarf so that only his eyes and part of his forehead were visible. Quite a sight, the prospect of killing them with my bare hands was disgustingly attractive. I didn't want to catch anything from these creatures. The bums dragged the bags into the courtyard. I gave them 15 minutes, then went to visit them. Now my hair stands on end, but at the time, there was cold confidence in my abilities. I came to take your lives. As I said, carelessness kills. Jumping over the fence, I looked around. The front door of the house was closed, but there was an open hatch to the basement. The night vision device turned out to be a very useful purchase. I don't skimp on my hobby. Already on the stairs, I smelled it, the smell of clotted blood and rotten meat. Night vision in one hand, pistol in the other. I descended the steep steps into the basement, ready to shoot. The basement was large. Inside were bodies, what was left of them, bones, scraps of clothing, and pieces of meat. And believe me, these were not animals, although people can also be considered animals. There was also one of the bums. In night vision, people's pupils glow. The open diaphragm of the iris reflects the infrared illumination from the eye ground. His pupils also glowed. His face was smeared with something black, as seen in night vision, but what he was holding in his hands made it clear what his face was smeared with and what he had just been doing. He jerked toward me. Now, I think it was the partner of my acquaintance, judging by the clothes. His face had previously been hidden by a scarf, an unnaturally wide mouth, sharp, uneven teeth. That's how I remember him. I ran. The silencer was too noisy, and the prospect of a massacre with a gang of cannibals didn't please me. Honestly, I was scared. In my second life, I had encountered various manifestations of human inhumanity. I had witnessed and participated in wild scenes. But here, there was something else that made me rush to the car and slam on the gas when the first creatures burst out of the house. I decided to leave them alone. Unlike most people who are unable to make a decision, I have no problem with that. An ordinary person will worry until they return to the scene of the crime or do something else stupid. And that's how they get caught. So I rejected the fantasy of returning loaded with weapons and arranging a holocaust for the bums. Let them live, as long as they don't interfere with me. The day before yesterday, one of them was standing near my car. I leave it in a parking lot near the house. In addition, my safety concerns me greatly, so if the lock on my door ever breaks, it will literally take 3 hours to saw it out. I have cameras in the entrance, and a couple more record the yard and parking lot. I try not to live by a schedule. Victims live by a schedule, not hunters, so I got up earlier and accidentally saw the figure on the monitor screen. Then he moved aside and left the field of view. From the window, I saw where he took up an observation position. He was guarding my car. I went to work by taxi. In the evening, the bum was no longer there. They appeared in the entrance camera footage about 30 minutes after I returned home. Apparently, they had spread out across the area and were waiting. Be that as it may, they were very good to find a person they had seen only for seconds, knowing only the number of the car I drive under a power of attorney. After hanging around the door, they left faster than I could decide whether to go out and shoot them. The situation really didn't please me. Considering what they do, and that they know where I live, the prospect of being attacked by bum cannibals looked both real and phantasmagoric at the same time. Yesterday, I decided to be clever and leave through another entrance of the high-rise where I live. The building is built in the shape of the letter G. In one of the entrances of the neighboring half of the G, an unidentified vandal cut off the hinges from the doors to the elevator and the roof, so they no longer close. In general, I expected that I would have to escape from the police, but the plan came in handy earlier. There were no bums visible in the entrance, so I left the apartment and went upstairs, unlocked the door to the roof with my copy of the key. I'm lucky. I don't know if I was born under a lucky star or if there are other reasons, but many probabilities work in my favor more often than probability theory suggests. I had a knife on my belt, I opened the door with my left hand, and my right was right on the handle. Now I can confidently say that these are not people. People don't move so fast. He had a piece of rebar or something like that. He rushed from somewhere on the left one moment, no one there. The next, a dark figure and a swing. 3. The knife flies into the center of the figure's chest. He knocked me down, I grabbed him, and stabbed with my free hand. I hadn't gotten so dirty in a very long time. Standing on the roof of my house, covered in blood, with a knife in my hand and a corpse at my feet, it's getting more and more interesting. In the end, I dragged the body down to my place, put it in the bathtub, and locked myself in. The bums examined the entrance several times, and I'm afraid to go out. I saw it in my bathtub. I opened it up. It looks like a human, but it is not a human. I know anatomy well, for well-known practical reasons. Many organs are common, some are deformed, as if affected by disease or a congenital defect, some I had never seen before. The liver is enlarged, dark inside, without fat inclusions. The gallbladder is deformed, another organ is attached to it, apparently some kind of gland. The teeth are sharp, it is adapted to eat meat. The brain is developed. The joints are thickened, the muscle tissue is very dense and cuts poorly. Wherever they came from, these are not people. Whether it's the result of evolution, changed people, or monsters living in society and mimicking their surroundings, or the spawn of dark forces in which I don't believe, it makes no difference. I'm not very interested in the reasons. I'm interested in here and now. Here and now I am working out a plan for tomorrow. I will not sit in my fortress like a beast driven into a hole. Obviously, in case of success, I will have to leave. Where and how are technical details you don't need to know. I still consider the probability that I will emerge from this game as the winner. When dawn breaks, I will begin to act. Sitting in one apartment with meat that is starting to smell is not for me. In any case, you need to know this. You may not believe me, you may consider it fiction. Just keep in mind that something different from humans may be nearby, and be more attentive. Don't give yourself away if you ever recognize them.